Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. It's great to see you all. My name is Lindsay Burke. I am the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Programs at the U.S. Department of Education. It is great to be here among so many like-minded educators. Thank you for being here. Honestly, though, has there ever been a more exciting time to be in education? It really hasn't been. It's unbelievable. And it is such an honor every single day to help advance the Trump administration's agenda to, consistent with federal law, restore education to the states and families where it rightfully belongs. Already to date, we have pulled down over 100 Biden-era guidance documents. Yes, because as you know, these documents are particularly pernicious. They arm activists on campus and weak-willed administrators to follow suit. Speaking of higher education, hundreds of universities have ended some facet of their DEI programs. We're working on reorienting civil rights enforcement, canceling countless woke grants, guidance documents, regulatory briefings, and enforcement. The administration is more resolute than any prior administration to remove federal micromanagement, to restore control to localities and families, and to make sure that students are free to learn and teachers are free to teach. This work is critically important. K-12 students in the U.S. have chronically, as you all know, low math and reading scores. 70% of students cannot read proficiently. And the long-standing achievement gap between low-income children and their more affluent peers, that 90-10 gap, is the equivalent of 4 years' worth of learning, the same today as it was when Lyndon Johnson launched the War on Poverty in 1965. At the same time, whistleblowers continue to uncover ideological attempts among teachers' unions and other special interest groups to discredit America's founding ideals of freedom and equality under the law. But there have been bright spots recently. A renaissance in phonics-based instruction has led to successes like the Mississippi Miracle, with students in the state skyrocketing from the bottom to the top of NAEP in terms of reading achievement. And school choice is going gangbusters. State after state, 19 states in fact, now have universal education choice, most of which have universal education savings accounts. 4 years ago, that number was 0 states with universal choice. But as British Prime Minister Winston Churchill wrote in 1940, success always demands a greater effort. Florida is putting in that effort. Indeed, when you think about education freedom, the first word that comes to mind is Florida. The Sunshine State ranks number 8 in the country for return on investment for taxpayer spending on education, number 2 in the country for both teacher freedom and education choice, and number 1 in the country for transparency, and is first place overall for education freedom. So it is my absolute pleasure today to be able to introduce Florida's newest education commissioner, who I know will continue that tradition of excellence and commitment to education freedom. Commissioner Anastasios Kamoutsas, I gotta work on your last name, Stasi. Getting stuck there. Commissioner Anastasios has had a long career serving the people of Florida. He started his career as an assistant state attorney for the Miami-Dade Office of the State Attorney, where he prosecuted some of Miami's most violent criminals. He subsequently represented police officers serving as counsel to the Dade County Police Benevolent Association. The commissioner has been a conservative leader in all major education policy efforts since joining the Florida Department of Education's Office of General Counsel in 2019. During his tenure at the Florida Department of Education, he went on to serve as general counsel and then chief of staff before being chosen to serve as deputy chief of staff for Governor Ron DeSantis. As deputy chief of staff, He oversaw policy efforts for the governor's priority areas of education, law enforcement, and emergency management. Over the last 6 years, he has been deeply involved in fighting for parental rights, school choice, and eliminating DEI and CRT. He also played an integral role in fighting against COVID mask mandates while supporting the governor's efforts to reopen schools to in-person learning in 2020, ahead of the curve. The commissioner holds a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Florida International University and earned his Juris Doctorate from Regent School of Law. Please join me in welcoming Commissioner Kamoutsas. There we go.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Anastasios Kamoutsas. Common spelling, Lindsay. I am so proud and honored to have been appointed as Florida's third Commissioner of Education under the leadership of Governor Ron DeSantis. I've been with this administration from the beginning in 2019, and it has been a tremendous blessing as a father of 4 daughters, a 9, 7, 3, and 1-year-old, to see the importance of education in the lives of these children and the impacts that educators have. It's second to none. But what I love about Florida is that parents are right there working alongside teachers, creating a conducive learning environment for our children. And the results speak for themselves. We talk about all these national rankings, and I'll get to that, but in Florida, just a couple weeks ago, we announced our progress monitoring assessment results. In Florida, where we focused on achievement over everything, which means it doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter your race, your sex, where you come from, your economic background, we're gonna teach to the standards. And we're going to meet you where you're struggling and make sure that we're providing the appropriate interventions for these students so that they can be proficient on grade level. Well, let me read some of those results for you. Since the inception of what we call progress monitoring, a first-in-the-nation approach, where you're assessing the child within the first period of the school year, you then assess the child in the middle of the school year, and again at the end to see what the learning gains were, we have seen in math alone, grades 3 through 10, almost 100,000 more students are now on grade level as a result of those efforts. And when you talk about English language arts, almost 115,000 students are now on grade level. But let's look at the demographics. Let's look at the subgroups. Who's benefiting from these policies? African American students up 5 percentage points in both areas from the beginning of the test to the end of the year. Hispanic students up 3 points in English language arts, 4 points in math. Economically disadvantaged students up 3 points in both subject areas. Students with disabilities up 4 points in both subject areas. This is the direct result of focusing on a student's ability to achieve and not what they look like or where they come from. Like I said, this is my first week as Commissioner of Education. I was fortunate. I know Manny Diaz was a crowd favorite, and I was his chief of staff at the time, so I hope to fill his major shoes. But what a great week it was, and we hit the ground running. On day one, it was important for me to communicate with all superintendents, teachers, and parents. And so I issued 3 memos. One to superintendents, reminding them of the rights of parents and teachers in the state of Florida. And I didn't hold back. I've made it very abundantly clear that if those rights were to be violated, I would be knocking on their door with our Attorney General, James Uthmeyer, who I know Tiffany Justice highlighted his newly created Office of Parental Rights. And so that's been a game changer for us in the state of Florida. I appreciate his partnership, and I look forward to continuing to push parents in the classroom. But it's also important that teachers be reminded of their rights, because in the state of Florida, the governor doesn't get enough credit for it, but he passed in 2023 House Bill 1035, which created the Teachers' Bill of Rights. Some of the things, monumental legislation, but some of the things it did was limit cell phones from being utilized during instructional time for an educator. And if you talk to teachers across the state of Florida, they will tell you that has made a significant difference in giving them the ability to maintain control over their classrooms. But you also have to allow a teacher to have the ability to discipline a disruptive student. And oftentimes what happens is you have teachers who are referring a student to the principal's office, and the principal's sending them right back without taking any action. Well, that cannot happen in the state of Florida without that principal putting in writing for the teacher what the basis was for making a decision that was not in alignment with the teacher, giving that educator control of their classroom. That was just day one. Then I traveled to Orlando that same day, where we were hosting our Teacher of the Year conference, which is a big deal in the state of Florida. And we honored all 76 of our district Teacher of the Year finalists. And it was a great crowd, very impressive. Just last night, I was able to announce the Teacher of the Year of Florida. His name is Mark Harrison out of Union County, which is a very rural community. And the work that he's doing, it's a tremendous blessing for those students. Mark Harrison is a 12th grade American government economics teacher who does civics and debates extracurricular with the students. He does the Florida Christian Association with the students. He also volunteers to be the bus driver for the school because they couldn't hire a bus driver this year. So it was a real honor to be able to bestow that recognition on him yesterday, and he was selected as Florida's Teacher of the Year. Very, very well deserving. On day two, I did a press conference with the Attorney General on fairness in women's sports, because we're still having to bring to light some of these private entities who are hosting, not public schools in Florida. We passed this, the governor signed a law, it was passed in 2022, I believe, created the Fairness in Women's Sports Act that says at the K-12 level or at the collegiate level, you cannot allow a male to participate in female sports. Very simple. But there are still private organizations that have policy on the books that allow for men to play with female sports. And so it was really rewarding for me, honestly, because for the first time, there were young ladies at this press conference who I heard from directly how they were negatively impacted as a result of some of these policies that really infringe upon women's rights. Whether it was taking their spot on a team, whether it was taking away a scholarship, or whether it was taking away a title or a championship or a trophy that they should have received, but for a man that was participating in their sports. And so I was happy to stand alongside the Attorney General with that. On day three, we had a State Board of Education meeting where the media says I gave a fiery speech. Surely, based on what I'm doing right now, you cannot believe that narrative. Just kidding. Maybe that one was true. But it was important that we set the tone going into the school year. To the superintendents, to the school leadership, parents' rights will be respected, teachers' rights will be respected, and there doesn't need to be a combative relationship. In fact, I'd like to see the opposite. I'd like to see teachers and parents collaborating to make sure that students are being put first and they are prioritized. And I think the more and more we're able to do that, the more we're going to see our students thrive, particularly in the state of Florida. I told you I'd get to some of those national rankings, and now's the time to do it. One that we're very proud of. Higher education. These K-12 kids, guess what? They end up going to higher ed eventually, whether it's through a workforce program or whether it's through an associate's or through a bachelor's degree. Well, in Florida, U.S. News and World Report has ranked Florida #1 for 9 years straight when it comes to higher education. And when it comes to overall education, Florida's been ranked #1 overall for the past 2 out of the 3 years. But one that I'm most proud of is the #1 ranking by the Heritage Foundation in education freedom for 3 years straight in the state of Florida. I'm also very proud of being ranked #1 in the Parent Power Index by the Center for Education Reform, because it is reflecting our robust school choice programs that include charter schools, private scholarships, and virtual education programs that we have in the state of Florida. We're also receiving the highest score on the 2025, or we received the highest score on the 2025 Ed Choice Friedman Index, showcasing Florida's expansive school choice programs, and we're ranked #1 by the ALEC Institute of State Education Freedom. And so these accolades are not an accident. They are the direct result of bold leadership that was championed by Governor Ron DeSantis. And as part of championing that bold leadership and those policies, the governor wasn't just focused on only parents, and he wasn't just focused on only teachers. He prioritized them both. Again, we don't get enough credit for it, but I talked about the Teachers' Bill of Rights. Well, let's talk about money, because that's a big point of discussion when you talk to teachers, salaries. Well, in Florida, over the past 5 years, the governor has invested $6 billion in what's called teacher salary increase allocation. That's not the base pay that a teacher receives, which is funded. I'm sorry to get a little technical here. I'll just leave it as the acronym, the FEFP, the Florida Education Financial Program. That's where you have the property taxes and the state taxes that essentially divvy up the budget for the districts. No, the governor went above and beyond and said, I'm going to prioritize teacher salaries, and I'm going to dedicate a certain amount of money for it. And so over his tenure, he's dedicated $6 billion investing in our educators, because that's how much we value them in the state of Florida. And so we were able to get them those salary increases, but then we encountered another issue, the teachers union. And the teachers union would hold this money up that was intended to go to the teachers by October 1st. Well, why would you want teachers to get these pay increases by October 1st? Well, what comes after October? Anybody who has a family knows, or who celebrates anything in life knows, you've got holidays that are coming up. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, it's all kinds of holidays that people celebrate. And so the governor's vision was, let's get these teachers that pay increase, that bonus, so that it hits them right when they really need it most during the holidays. But the teachers union took that salary increase and tried to leverage it to be able to get more on their end, whether it was, additional authority in the classrooms, whether it was additional days off, whatever the case is, the teachers union always seemed to have been an obstacle. I was proud to be the chief of staff at the time when we brought all the districts who were being hijacked by the teachers union in to the State Board of Education. And we had those superintendents on the stand present to the State Board and explain, why do these teachers, who the governor wants to have their money immediately, why don't they have it yet? And every single one of those superintendents said, it's because the teachers union has held it up in negotiations. And so as a result, what did we do? We worked with the Freedom Foundation and we passed Senate Bill 256. Very, very important piece of legislation that pushed back on the teachers union. For anybody who knows about Senate Bill 256, the first thing we did is paycheck protection for teachers. It was incredible the amount of teachers we surveyed who didn't realize that when you first showed up as a teacher 10, 15, 20 years ago, you signed a piece of paper that said the teachers union was allowed to automatically deduct money out of your pay. And so they hadn't looked at it for years and didn't realize that was still going on. Many teachers thought that was just part of their taxes that they were required to pay, not realizing the money was being funneled to the teachers union. So we said, as a result of this legislation, you have now got to sign every year if you want the teachers union to be able to get that money. You have to be aware of your rights as an educator and know that they just cannot automatically take that money out of your salaries. And we built on that, in addition to that, we said, teachers unions, if you want to maintain your status as a union and remain certified, you should have at least 60% of the bargaining unit certify you. And so I'm proud to say, as a result of this legislation, we've had over 30 teachers unions at the K-12 level alone who have been decertified and have had to go through the process of receiving certification again. By forcing teachers unions to have to recertify, instead of allowing them to just speak on behalf of the small minority of the collective bargaining unit, honestly, Florida has ensured that collective bargaining truly represents the majority of its members again, as it was intended to do. We know that unions are not about students. I've seen it time and time again, but let me tell you some anecdotes. Lindsay spoke about my time when I was the general counsel at the Department of Education. I remember I was in charge of locating witnesses in our trial to keep schools open. You may recall they said Florida is going to kill all the students and all the teachers because of the policies that the governor championed to keep schools open. Meanwhile, I was on the phone with parents who said they're going to lose their jobs if they're staying home all day because they've got to get back to work. I was on the phone with moms who had students with disabilities that said, my child cannot learn by having a computer screen in front of their face all day. I was on the phone with African American parents telling me that we need our kid to be able to go back to school because it's a safe place, because they're regressing significantly, because, hey, for our family, this is where they're getting their meal for the day oftentimes because we're dealing with some real hard times in our household. I heard from English language learner families who don't speak English and were telling, I speak Spanish, and so they were telling me, how am I supposed to log into a computer? I don't even know the language. And so you had all of these vulnerable populations that were particularly impacted by schools remaining closed, and yet the teachers union and the media ran with the narrative that said by keeping schools open, those were the very populations we were hurting. You may recall, we were sued after we got schools back open because we didn't allow mask mandates. And the basis for the lawsuit was an Individuals with Disabilities and Education Act violation, where we won in court, but the assertion was that we were discriminating against students with disabilities by not forcing mask mandates on students. Well, I didn't have any expertise in a little area called speech-language pathology, but I got to talk to the experts, and I got to hear from them firsthand how a child's developing brain is very much contingent upon looking at their teacher's mouth move throughout the day to be able to develop those skills to have to have a vocabulary, especially when you talk about children from ages 3 to 5 years old. And so you didn't see that in the media, you just saw the lawsuit. Similarly, fairness in women's sports, we got sued over that as well. And I had experts come and testify. There's differences in bone density, differences in muscular mass. There is literal physical threats for women who are participating with males, particularly in contact sports. Yet again, we were deemed the bigots in the state of Florida who fought to maintain the protections that women were afforded when Title IX was passed. And I asked myself, wait a minute, have I read a story where a woman has taken the place of a boy on a team, or taken the scholarship away from a boy for participating in boy sports, or a female's taken away a championship from a boy because they participated in a male sport? You don't see that. So how folks don't look at what we're fighting for when it comes to Title IX protections as literally an infringement on women's rights boggles my mind. And so, again, day 4, last night, we announced our Teacher of the Year winner, which was great. I was so encouraged, particularly by the work that Mark does. I think he's a man of faith, he's a man of principle, and most importantly, he's very passionate about his students. He wants them to be able to be on grade level, go on and be productive members of society. And so I was very encouraged by that. And now today is day 5, where I'm speaking to a group that I've really enjoyed getting to know over the past couple years. I remember 2 years ago, around this time when you had your first conference, we were in Denver, Colorado, and they start talking about this guy named Sean Baytall. Have you guys heard about this Sean Baytall character, the teacher? All right, well, Sean Baytall was very involved with Freedom Foundation, and I find myself sitting next to him at this table at the conference 2 years ago, and I go, Mr. Baytall, I think you were my 10th grade chemistry teacher when I was at Dr. Kropp. He goes, that was you, oh my God. Thankfully for my name, which is so unique, Anastasios Kamoutsas, he was able to recall, oh yeah, I think you actually are not pulling a fast one on me. You really were a student in my classroom. But it's been great over the years to be able to work with you all, to be able to build that relationship, to be able to encourage great educators like you all, and to see the room has expanded significantly, Aaron, since that conference 2 years ago. It's really encouraging to see that you've got educators who are taking time off. You could be on summer vacation right now like so many other educators, but you're here wanting to improve upon your profession, wanting to fight back on the voices that truly are in the minority, but they try to swallow the good profession and the great work that you all are trying to get done. So I'm super humbled and honored to be here, excited to be the proud product of a public education system down in Miami. I have another friend who I believe is in the crowd by the name of Alan Tarab. Alan, are you here? Hey! Good to see you. So Alan was in school with me since 5th grade. And so if you want to hear stories about how much of a troublemaker I was as a kid, Alan can tell you that. And if they're really bad, then I'll deny them till I'm blue in the face. But it's great to see people that I grew up with, people who I learned from, who are involved in this conference, who are involved with this organization. It shows that it's paying dividends and it's making a difference in my community, and it's extremely rewarding for me. It's extremely rewarding for me to be able to give back to my state that's done so much for me as a kid and serve in this capacity. So I'm really looking forward to be able to get to know many of you. Hopefully we can interact when I get off this stage. And I know there might be some questions in the audience, so if anybody has any questions, now's the time. Thank you.
Same rules as always. If you could please state your name, where you're from, and your brief question. I'll be holding on to the mic, so.
Hi, Commissioner. Thank you. Honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I'm a teacher in California with 5 kids. And when we were shut down, I was the teacher trying to teach 5 kids at home, and also my husband too. And you were a beacon of hope, Florida was, knowing that you were standing up for what we felt was so insane and oppressive. So thank you. What sort of national impact do you think that Florida will be able to make? And are you taking steps to work with the Trump administration to implement what you're implementing in Florida, to make it something that could be like quite frankly, another beacon of hope for those of us in blue states who are not seeing the same results that you're seeing in Florida?
Absolutely. I think first, I would say we are seeing the Florida model being taken to the nation. I thank God a couple weeks ago, the U.S. Supreme Court made a major decision when it came to parental rights and the ability to decide what sort of instruction and subject areas your children are going to be taught as it relates to sexual orientation and gender identity. Folks forget it was House Bill 1467 in 2023 that the governor signed that allowed parents to have a voice in the classroom by objecting to inappropriate materials for minors. And it was House Bill 1557, the Parental Rights in Education, in 2022 that the governor signed that talked about the prohibited instruction of sexual orientation and gender identity in kindergarten through 3rd grade. We came back the next year in House Bill 1069. Forgive me, I'm a lawyer, so I know all the numbers of these bills, so you can completely disregard it. But we came back and said the next year, no, K through 8, it's prohibited, and only in a manner that is age and developmentally appropriate when it comes to 9 through 12. Folks may ask, well, why did we do that 9 through 12? Well, because they talk about Supreme Court cases, and the reality is there is the Obergefell decision, there is the Bostock decision, and I think it's important that these Supreme Court cases be discussed on some of these major topics, particularly where I think the court got it wrong. Second, I would say, with respect to school choice, we've been working with the U.S. Department of Education, and our feedback has been towards what's known as the NAEP exam, the national assessment that is utilized every 2 years to kind of measure states. Florida is at a disadvantage when it comes to the NAEP exam because a lot of our students, over 500,000, are participating on scholarships in private schools. And so those kids, some of our highest achievers, are not getting captured in that assessment. And so as a result, I think it's to the detriment of Florida. But I think the biggest thing, the third thing, that Florida has done that has really brought national attention in the past couple weeks has created a consortium for universities to utilize as an accreditor. And so you have these 6 or 7 states that are partnering together that are going to make sure that universities who are seeking accreditation are getting an accreditor who's not going to impose an ideology on them. Some of you may know about SACS. SACS is an accrediting body that requires DEI for a university to receive its accreditation. And so you can imagine universities were stressed out, particularly under the Biden administration, whether or not they were going to maintain accrediting status, which is everything for a university, because they were now required to do DEI, and they fundamentally don't agree with that. I'll give you an example. The New College of Florida. Have any of you heard of that, where the governor took over and put his former commissioner of education? That university is a beacon of hope for conservatism, where we're going to make sure students don't have an ideology imposed on them, where they can speak freely about their conservative values without reprimand or without retribution, and they can be, they can be unabashedly conservative. And so I think by building out that accreditor, it's going to be one of those legacy items. To President Trump's credit, he did issue an executive order that said current accreditors cannot have requirements that violate state laws. So currently, SACS cannot engage in its ideology, but when President Trump moves on, and God forbid we switch administrations, you have to build something out so that there's a legacy that lives beyond the president. And Florida led the way by creating this consortium and a new accrediting body that will not require some of this invasive ideology that you're seeing by SACS. So those are some of the 3 things we're seeing at the national level that Florida's leading on. But let's be honest, Florida's a leader on all kinds of things across the nation. So I only picked 3 of many things I could have rattled off.
Hi, I'm Priscilla Ron from Denver Public Schools, and to add on to what you were saying in the previous question, because Florida is so different from Colorado and our legislators are pushing so hard, our governor's trying to outdo the California governor, and they're going into a special session August 11th to debrief and reformulate how we fund schools. Where can we start? It just seems like it's so overbearing to try to solve the problems. We're losing on the gender conversation. We're losing on all of these fronts. But can you give us some hope of what you think we should focus on in order to just try to turn the Titanic?
I think you focus on the results. Some of the things that I rattled off, U.S. News and World Report isn't exactly a conservative, right-leaning entity, and it's ranking Florida #1. So I think you point to that. I think you look at some of the progress monitoring results that I spoke about in the beginning, where you're seeing palpable, tangible data that shows students are significantly increasing in learning gains when you focus on the actual subject areas as opposed to the ideology. I think competition is what's going to drive the market. And ultimately, the schools in California and in Colorado, they have a reputation, unfortunately. And it's not that they have bad teachers. It's the fact that there is time that's wasted on things that are not geared towards mastery of the subject area. As a result, students are losing out, and parents are going to have to vote with their feet and decide, do I want to keep my child in a place that's, fighting over, I used the restroom over here. You could tell I'm not in Florida anymore. It said all-inclusive restroom. I'm like, wait a minute, where am I? It's Washington, D.C., of course. And I'm sure you guys have that stuff as well. But thankfully in Florida, we have common sense. Women are women, men are men. We don't mix that up. In fact, that bill that I talked about, House Bill 1069, when we expanded it, K through 8 prohibited instruction and has to be age or developmentally appropriate in high school, we also talked about pronouns, which was very helpful for teachers in 2 ways. Number 1, we said your biological traits are immutable. So anybody who goes to a Bible study class, you can define what that term means, but that's in our state law, which means it's never changing. It cannot vary no matter how hard you try. It is an immutable characteristic. But number 2, very importantly, this piece of legislation said you as a teacher and I as a student cannot be forced to recognize a pronoun by which we don't agree with. And what I mean, that is opposite biological sex at birth. And so that was huge for teachers because we had folks who were, you have that parent who has a kindergartner that Johnny wants to now be referenced as Sally or as a she, and the teacher had sort of a religious conflict internally. How do I handle this? This is not truth. This is not what I believe in. I feel like, I'm being forced into doing something that I don't agree with in my job. And so we passed that piece of legislation, again, to support educators, but also to recognize truth. And I think the more we are bringing light to truth, parents are going to see, I want to follow that light as opposed to remain in the darkness.
Thank you.
Yeah. And forgive me for biblical references. There were some parents who were a little offended by one of my memos. Listen to this. I mean, look, this is by far the vast minority in the state of Florida, but I was talking about it earlier with Rusty and Aaron and Lindsay, just telling them, we sent a memo out reminding parents of their rights. And one of the things that I put in there is your child will not be discriminated against on the basis of their background or the way God created them. And so that was like, oh, you can't say that. Some folks were worked up. I would imagine the folks in California and Denver, their heads would explode with a memo like that. But the reality is it's truth, and we're not going to be ashamed of that. In fact, we're going to be very proud of that. And last I checked, when we do the Pledge of Allegiance, we still say one nation under God. So it is what it is, as they say.
Thank you. My name is Candace Green, and I'm from Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I have a question for you about working with other commissioners and other school boards in other states, and what plans you might have to share some of your really amazing, excellent policies, maybe on day 6.
Well, on day 7, can I at least rest? Another biblical reference, sorry. They're going to call me a Bible thumper at the end of it. Alan, by the way, my good friend Alan, you're Jewish, right? I'm quoting Old Testament. I haven't even gotten to the New Testament yet. Wait till I get there. But no, there are some great organizations that are out there. Heritage Foundation is very intentional about getting state leaders together. Freedom Foundation is very intentional about getting not just commissioners and leaders, but getting the folks that are in the trenches like you all together to be able to implement those policies on the front line. I know there's another organization, Excel in Education, headed by former Governor Jeb Bush, that also is getting state leaders together. So there are a lot of these organizations that are trying to get folks at this level to get together to try to keep up with each other's policies. I find myself every time we go there, we tend to keep talking about Florida and everything we're doing. And so it seems like we're kind of the parent in those meetings where we're like, okay, well, this is what we did and this is how you can get it accomplished. But we're proud to be able to spread the blueprint throughout the nation, because the reality is it benefits families, it benefits teachers, and most importantly, it benefits students.
That's all the time we have for questions. We're going to hear some closing remarks from our CEO, Aaron With.
This is my jam. There we go. We cranked it up. All right, that's enough. Please join me. He can hear you back here. Please join me in thanking Stasi one more time. All right, I've got 2 minutes of closing remarks. First of all, I want for you all and from myself to extend our thanks to the staff. They have worked really hard, not just the past 3 days, but the last 6 months on this. My second housekeeping notice is there will be a QR code on the screen momentarily, and it'll also be sent to you afterwards. There's going to be a survey sent to you guys. I'm not going to encourage you all to fill this out. We need you to fill this out. Feedback from you is how we set sessions for future years. It's how we figure out what the needs of our members are. You are all our members. So this communication is key for us. So I would encourage you to do it as soon as I'm done talking, because you're in it right now. Don't wait till you get home. Please fill this out as soon as possible. All right. The last message I have for you is the same message that I have last night, which is to stand up, to be brave, and to fight back. And it starts with a small step. That could be, if you're in the union right now, that could be as simple as opting out. That could be, if you are already out, it could be telling your friends to leave or telling them to join the Teacher Freedom Alliance, the online application process. You all went through it. It's not that vigorous. It's not that intensive. There's a checkbox for affirming that our beliefs are in line, but we need to drive up membership. We need to get more people here this year. We need to get more teachers involved. And we are delivering that message every day, but it is far more effective if it comes from people's peers, which is all of you in this room. So you are our front line of Teacher Freedom Alliance members. We launched this 4 months ago. 2,500 people on top of you guys here have signed up already, and we need to grow this network. In a year's time, I want to come back to wherever we're hosting this and report that there are 10,000 members. And then lastly, look for opportunities. I have 70 employees, and all their jobs are to fight unions, but they are not going to find out what's going on in Becca, Minnesota. They're not going to find out what's going on in all of your school districts at any time. We are relying on you to communicate that, and we're relying on you to be on the front line. So those are some practical action items. And if you are not fired up to do them after watching Yeonmi Park last night, then I can't do any more. That speech was moving to me, certainly. And here's where I'm gonna end. I'm gonna end with a quote. It's a quote that you've probably all heard a million times, but I want to remind you of it. It's from Reagan. It's that freedom is a fragile thing, and it's never more than one generation away from extinction. It is not. Wait a second. It is not ours by the way of inheritance, but it must be fought for and defended constantly. That's what you guys are in charge of. That's what we're on the front lines of. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for all you do.